Hey everyone, welcome back to ADP List Growth Series. As you can see, we have two very special guests here with us today. First of all, I just love to introduce myself. My name is Felix, one of the co-founders here at ADP List. We are a global mentorship platform serving over more than 250,000 members around the world with over 25,000 mentors in 140 different countries. So we want to jump into this session, but before that, I want to talk a little bit about the two guests here and the main topic that we're talking about this evening, this night, or this morning with everyone. So today's topic is really about the current state of design, UX, and really what does the future hold for the entire industry, for you individually as well in the UX and design field. So we've invited two very special guests. In fact, just from a numbers perspective, this is probably our largest growth session series with over close to 8,000 registrations from just around the world just for this session alone. And we're just really impressed with the numbers. So speaks volume about the guest that has joined us today. Now, without further ado, I want to make a quick introduction about the two of them. So as all of you have already joined the previous session with Jakob, and Jakob is the king of usability noted by the Internet magazine. He is also the guru of web page usability. So Jakob Nielsen is a usability pioneer with over 40 years of experience in UX. He's also the founder of UX Tigers. And he's also obviously and famously known to have talk about and advocated for cheap iterative design systems and also heuristic evaluation and also the 10 usability heuristics. So I'm sure all of you know Dr. Nielsen very well here, Jakob, and so we're gonna put it there, and obviously Jakob can share a little bit more about himself later on, but all of you have already met him a few times now. Now we're going to talk a little bit about our new guest here, Sarah, to the session, in which Jakob has very kindly make that introduction. So Sarah might also be a very familiar face for all of you in design, whether be it you're on YouTube or you might pass by some videos by Nelson Norman Group. So Sarah is a design leader and strategist. Sarah's pioneering research is in design thinking, service design, and mapping frameworks that sets the gold standards for design around the world. So before she joined the Nelson Norman Group as the VP, Sarah played an important role in conceptualizing, researching, and designing collaborative software built on IBM's Watson's AI. So I know that AI is a big thing, so we're going to talk about it today as well. She also took the role of design thinking educator for designers, researchers, front-end developers, product managers during the establishment of IBM Design back in 2014. So she has tons of experience in the field. In terms of academic-wise, Sarah had graduated as a valedictorian from the College of Design at North Carolina State University. I've not been in North Carolina, but it sounds like a great school, so I'll just put it as that. And obviously, she was a valedictorian. So, I have huge respect for people who can, ace their exams and still come out and ace the world. So, here we welcome both Jakob and Sarah. Welcome to the growth session.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm honored, by the way, for all of you joining. It's an honor to be in front of you, especially if it's 2 a.m. like it is for Felix. So
thank
we'll
you.
We'll try to keep you all awake by punching some content.
Yes. Now, so we're going to set some ground rules, all right? We're going to set some ground rules. So if anyone has any questions, there is the right side question bar. So please feel free to, put in your question. But if you don't have any questions, you are also free to vote for someone else's question. It's almost like a game. So we're going to get started. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about the agenda for today. So everyone knows what to expect. You want to want to stay tuned as well. So the first part of today's session, we're going to talk about the current day and the current state of design and UX. Then we're going to move into design leadership. We're going to move into AI in design. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the future of design, right? Whether it be the state of the industry and also with AI itself as well. So I think it's going to be quite a packed session with Sarah and Jakob sharing their insights. But, we are going to obviously dive right into it right now. So, Jakob and Sarah, I think we talk about this, in our preparation ahead of today's meeting. We have seen a wave of layoffs happening around the world right now. Designers laid off. Obviously, tons of designers are laid off from big tech or even startups as well. So I want to start off with this topic just because, I really want to talk about painting the existing landscape of design. If Jakob or Sarah, you both can start sharing about, your thoughts on, why do you think this wave of layoff is happening? But more importantly, what does it mean for the industry at this very moment?
Yeah. Well, I think this is where it's productive to take a very long-term perspective. And I've been in UX for 41 years now. So that helps in thinking about a situation like this. Because there's no doubt there is a downturn right now, and there has been many people laid off, no doubt about that. But if you think about the longer term, this field has grown so dramatically. And I predict only that it will grow even more in the future. So if you look at the long-term trend, it's just up, up, up. If you look at the short term from one year to the other, there sometimes it's down. We've seen this before, with the .com bubble bursting. That was terrible, particularly in Silicon Valley. So many companies went out of business. So many people lost their jobs. Or with the big financial crisis, the so-called Great Recession in 2009. So, we bounced back after that, and we'll bounce back after this as well. So in the bigger perspective, I have no worries whatsoever. Now, that said, I think there are two interesting big changes that are also happening. And the one is the move away from high tech as being the home or the main place for UX. Now, UX started as being, it started in telephone companies, which is one part of high tech, and then it became big in the PC industry, then it became big in the web industry or internet industry. So those are all high tech industries. But actually, I would say that we are broadening the scope of UX to apply to all industries. So in this kind of online or virtual era, brand is experience. How you interact with people through digital experiences becomes the way you're communicating your brand. So all industries need UX. All industries are actually hiring UX as well. But of course, they're starting from a low starting point and building up. Whereas the high tech has had, 50 years of doing it already. So that used to be the big thing, but it's no longer the big thing. And so I actually think it's fine that there may not be as many jobs in high tech in the future as there were in the past. And that's due to the second big change, which is AI, which is immensely increasing productivity of all knowledge workers, including UX people. And that means that we don't need as many of them for any individual project. But there will be so many more projects. That's my key message. So many more projects in so many other additional industries beyond high tech. So if you think about the question of are you guys going to have a job or not have a job? That's not going to be the problem. There will be so many jobs. They just may not be in high tech, all of them.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, I really agree with Jakob. And I think it's worth just openly acknowledging that for a lot of us, it's a really hard time and things have changed. There's no doubt about that. And I have a lot of empathy for anyone who's searching for a job or kind of in this moment of transition. And the competition is really fierce. And I think a few things give me kind of comfort in understanding the landscape. One, it's that tech, of course, but also most corporations are going through this really big shift. We see HR data, telling everyone that this is the year of performance reviews. It's the year of efficiency. And then we also see that company loyalty is at the lowest it's ever been, which is a really interesting moment, right? And then not only is that an interesting moment that we're kind of seeing, but then we have this complete shift in technology and a brand new era being welcomed in. And so I think, part of it is also just recognizing that we are at a really interesting intersection. And it's a valley, right? It's a valley in terms of the number of jobs. It's a valley in terms of right now kind of the economy. And recognizing, as Jakob always says, and I do really find a lot of value in this, is that when you look at a really kind of long horizon, there's been a lot of valleys. And so kind of recognizing that. And then I think thinking about what you can do and what's important to you is, I feel like it's a moment, just like treating, or a lot of businesses do, in moments or valleys, times when it's quieter, you think about the foundation you want to kind of lay, right? And I think that if you treat yourself like a business, you can kind of do that too, right? What foundation right now? What do you want to do? What do you want to explore? What do you want to learn? What do you want to write about? And having the time, because we're not at a peak, we're not storming, we're not running at a lot of different things. If you are job searching, I think it's a really good moment to do that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Jacob and Sarah. It really feels like, you know, the perspective that you're sharing with us here today, I think a lot of it comes from abundance, right, of the future. And I think that many people maybe almost look at it from a scarcity perspective, that, hey, you know, AI might be replacing some of the things, and this might be what is causing the layoffs and whatnot. But both of you have really gave a very different perspective to that. I would say that sort of opinion, in the sense of the perspective that, hey, look, it is a mindset of abundance. It is a future of abundance. Now, talking a little bit about sort of the state of what it's happening right now, I want to talk a little bit about next steps and really actionable things that people can do right now at this very moment. I know that Sarah, you know, at NN Group, you know, you all interact with many designers from really all levels and all walks of life. And Jacob as well, you interact with tons of designers almost on a daily basis. I would love to, you know, have perspective from the both of you in terms of, you know, what can people do right now. I think almost on an independent and individual level, you know, what can they do to maybe prepare themselves at this very moment for what's coming next, or even what's already happening right now. But also, you know, the second question is, you know, how can they prepare as a community? How can they help someone around them, right? So if Sarah or Jacob, you guys want to start first, go for it.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different components to that question, Felix. I think the first thing that comes to mind is LinkedIn right now, by the way, is like the Wild West. Wild West in terms of excitement, and also just a trash can of bad advice and crazy things. And in a lot of ways, I think it's really positive, because there's this place to share and explore. And what I'd like to see is more sharing of failure, because I think a lot of times that's the moments of growth. And I don't know if you all have heard the metaphor, rising tide floats all boats, right? And it's this idea that we, as a design industry, as a research industry, are really uniquely positioned to be at the forefront of this next era. Because what AI can do is really great, but we bring the human aspect to it. And I think when you think about that, you're like, okay, well, what can we do as a community? I think it's share with each other, and that includes failures. I think it's explore, have curiosity. Jacob has this saying, start small and start now. And I think that's spot on, right? Like, have curiosity in these different things. And then I think the last thing, which I really struggle with, is practice what we actually preach. So I can't tell you how many times I've gotten in a facilitation or workshop room or role and been like, okay, forget everything you know, and let's imagine what could exist. And I think that the teams and individuals that ride this wave and kind of make the leap forward are going to be the ones that think broader than what exists today. Whether it's different ways you can incorporate AI into your process, whether it's imagining all the different verticals or industries that it could play a role in. So those are some of the few things that come to mind. Jacob, what about you?
Oh, I mean, I think that what people could do on an individual basis, if they are looking for a job, is to, in some sense, not stop working just because you don't have a job, because you have to continue to keep yourself fresh, grow your crystallized intelligence, grow your knowledge base, or you will fall behind because times are changing so fast. And so that's, of course, easier said than done. But I mean, try to find some projects and do. And given that we are in this world now where the AI tools are also changing very fast. That means you have to keep up with them. There's like probably 30 new tools coming out every day, and that's too much. Nobody can use that, can try out or learn that many, but at least try some new tools and learn them. And of course, the big tools, things like ChatGPT and Midjourney, definitely develop, a high level of skill with those. In whatever your sort of like sub-discipline is, whether you're a visual designer, interaction designer, user researcher, whatever, UX writer, all of these sub-disciplines can all be helped, which is why this productivity advance is happening. But you have to be part of that. You have to actually become a better practitioner than you were in the past with these tools to help you. And the only way to do that is to actually use the tools on some goals you set yourself. Even if you don't have a boss or job to set the goal for you, you have to set it yourself. So just keep working, even if you are not in work, employed for work. And then as a community, I feel like, well, there are two things I think could be done. And one of them is kind of bigger collaborative projects, because again, that interdisciplinary approach is key to UX. And so several people coming together in local meetups, but also specifically on that job search situation. Most people honestly have terrible portfolios and terrible resumes. If seen by a hiring manager who gets 1,000 of them, and Sarah was just in that situation, she posted quite nicely on LinkedIn some of her conclusions as to what people should do. I would recommend you go and find that post, because that was really insightful. But what you can do actually, if you pair up with some other designer, you can review each other's, and I would say with a very skeptical mind. Think about that you're getting 1,000 applications for jobs, which is the classic situation right now. There's a lot of applicants, which means that if you're on the incoming side of that fire hose, you have a few seconds, honestly, for each one to kind of think about whether you want to look into in more detail. Then if you do want to look into in more detail, then maybe 2 minutes. And for somebody to get onto the short list, which is really your goal at that first stage, is just to kind of survive that screening. And yes, so have somebody review it and just ask those questions. Can I tell what was done? Can I tell why this is good for the business? Remember, this is the goal of everything. The goal of all we do is to help some business do better. And it doesn't matter that you made all these personas and blah, blah, that they teach you in the boot camps, because these steps all have their place. That's why they teach them. But the ultimate is that they actually make a difference. Does it have some business value? And so you have to communicate that and communicate it. But this is what I've always said, right, in terms of usability of digital content. Get to the point. Tell me what it's about, what it's for, and so forth. So that's nothing new, but it applies very, very much in the job search situation.
Yeah. One other thing I'll add, if this is helpful for anyone, but when I was kind of just starting in facilitation, I got involved in some nonprofits because it was a really valuable way to contribute to a cause that I cared about and also hone in my skills as a practitioner. And then it becomes a portfolio project. And I think that if you are in that position of, you hear Jakob say, don't stop working because you don't have a job, but you're like, well, what am I going to go do? I think it's a really nice intersection of having a kind of greater purpose and value while fine-tuning and honing your skills that then can become a portfolio project.
Well, thank you so much for that, Sarah and Jakob. There are tons of insights, I think, when we talk about what they can do individually, whether be it sharing their failures or sharing sort of like working on projects and not just stopping during this time, nonprofit projects. I think those are incredibly powerful insights. And for anyone taking notes, please feel free to share them in the comments so that everyone can also see what you wrote. Share them publicly as well, for anyone who is not here. But I want to move on to talk a little bit about this idea of also now that we understand a little bit more about the state of the current design, we also know that that these layoffs are not permanent. Things are changing and we have to adapt to it. I want to move on to the next topic, right? Now that we have some actionables as well, I want to move on to the next topic, which is, I think, really close to a lot of people's heart, and where they eventually want to be, which is becoming, an influential person, or rather, I would say, someone who can contribute meaningfully to a company. And in many ways, that is today done by incredible design leaders, right? Like Julie Zhou from Facebook, where she was there, and we interviewed her last week. It was an amazing session as well. So I want to talk a little bit about design leadership, and I know that Sarah, you have tons of, I think, thoughts on this as well, similar to Jacob. But I want to start off this topic with with the question of, obviously, about human-centered design, right? I think a lot of things in the world are changing extremely fast. As a design leader, I think we are also seeing things that are changing fast, not just in technology, but also in human behavior, right? Employee loyalty is at an all-time low, as you mentioned, Sarah. So can we talk a little bit about the importance of human-centered design in today's world, especially when things are moving so fast, right? Maybe talk a little bit about that from a designer and also a design leader's perspective.
Sure, I can jump in here. So I think that our field and our practice is a game of balance, right? It's a balance of welcoming new technology with optimism and excitement, and also balancing it with appropriate apprehension and curation and critique. And I think when you think about our practice over kind of a decade and watching change, it's really interesting how much doesn't change, right? And that a lot of our original principles and our critical thinking and problem solving skills are just as valid and applicable as ever. And I think a lot of us come into this practice because we love to critically think and problem solve. And I think the hardest part of our jobs, and I think what a lot of us are drawn to, is actually defining what the problem is. And the beauty about new technology is it's, the wicked problem. There are going to be so many new problems to solve. And so I think as a design leader and or kind of community thought contributor, I think that balance is really important to remember, right? It's in leadership, empowering your employees or your company to have curiosity and explore, but also not lose sight of what we're here to do, which is to remember our end users, who they are, and figure out what they need. So I think to me, it's really about this maintaining balance, which becomes even harder when everyone's shouting, the world is on fire, which in a lot of ways it is, right? And so to me, that's kind of a theme that I'm keeping close. And then I would say second is kind of the shift in management. So we talked about employee loyalty being at an all-time low. And it's because companies just continue to ask more and more of their employees, and then they don't reward that, right? And I actually think a big part of this is that managers should never have been made managers in a lot of cases, right? They were maybe really good at their craft, but maybe not so good at fostering other people's craft. And so something that I've really been thinking about, and Jacob and I have actually talked a lot about, which is this kind of shifting of the role of a manager in our field, and that maybe this idea of management is actually going to revert back to the original SME, subject matter expert, where it's ownership over a specific product or tool, and then leave management to be a craft in and of itself, which is creating growth opportunities and confidence in your employees. And so it's a really interesting thing, and that's kind of top of mind as a design leader right now for me.
Right. Yeah. No, I want to say that even as things are changing, there's a lot of things that are not changing, and the human-centered design is absolutely one of them. And a lot of the methodologies like user testing and so forth remain the same. And another thing that's also going back to the notion of the historical perspective, every time there's a new technological revolution, it's being used wrong. It's particularly close to me with the web, because that was when I did a lot of kind of my first kind of big guideline rules. The first websites were so terrible. I mean, today's websites are maybe not perfect, but they are much better. The same was true when mobile came out. I mean, the first mobile designs was take a website and shrink it to tiny size. That's not how you design for mobile, but that was a lot of the early designs. Now with AI, we have a lot of really terrible user interfaces. I mean, even I mentioned the big, really important products like ChatGPT and Midjourney have absolutely terrible user interfaces. They're just being used anyway because the core service is so enormously valuable. So there's a lot for us to do. Every time there's a new revolution, we go back to the basics. Okay, we got to do all our groundwork yet again to fix these bad designs. But then I think there's a second change, and that Sarah kind of alluded to already, which is I think the UX is becoming more spread out than in the past. It was more kind of centralized. And so I call it kind of pancaking, flattening out the hierarchy. And so in the past, there was this management ladder where somebody could be promoted to manager, maybe the wrong people, but anyway, that would happen. And then the managers would be promoted to director, the directors would be promoted to vice president. And the game was to accumulate more and more underlings under your pyramid there. So what I'm thinking is happening is it's flattening out, because UX will be more distributed. It will be everywhere. It will permeate everything, which is good. It's like we have won. If UX is just the way things are done, it's everywhere. But that means you're not going to have this 500-person design group that one person gets to be the head of the 500 people. Well, in any case, by simple mathematics, only 1 out of 500 people can in fact be the head of a group, of that big department. So it's not something for most people anyway, but it's something that many people aspire to, maybe, that they say, I'm going to climb the ladder means I'm going to be promoted to higher levels of management. And that, I think, is less so in the future. There may still be a few jobs like that, but that's not going to be the main way that you advance to design leadership. I think it's going to be by, as Sarah's pointed out, like ownership. Like you start out not really owning anything, you start more like helping, and then you start owning like a little thing, and then you own a bigger part of the design, and you become maybe a design architect or in charge of design systems. There's a variety of ways in which you can kind of own or be better at a higher scope or more effect on the company. So that's a way. So we've always talked about having 2 ladders, a management ladder and expertise ladder. So my prediction is just that the management ladder becomes less important. Not that they will go away, but just less important, whereas the expertise ladder becomes dramatically more important, because UX becomes more important to the way the world runs. So there's this relatively old saying, software is eating the world. And software is eating the world. It was Mark Andreessen, the guy who made the first graphical user interface to the web. So he is now a venture capitalist. So Mark Andreessen says software is eating the world. Everything basically is being run by software these days. And this is correct. But I would say the follow-on to that conclusion that he made, so my conclusion, I guess, is that user interfaces are also eating the world, because software has complicated user interfaces because it can do so much, and it's invisible unless you make it visible, which is our job in design. So user interfaces become everywhere. Everything is a user interface. Has to be designed, has to be subjected to user testing and user research, all our skills. So our importance to the world economy, to the world businesses are done, is growing and expanding. That's my entire point, expanding. So rather than this concentrated design leadership, we have this pancaking, flattening it out, but the requirements for expertise are higher than ever. So that becomes the growth part for most leadership in this field.
Thank you so much for that, Jakob and Sarah. While it is like 2:30 a.m. here, but I just caught something which I thought was really interesting, which was really kind of how the evolution of technology I also think that the evolution of industry of UX and design has also, in a way, I think, unconsciously or unintentionally affected career ladders, right? When we talk about AI and obviously, upskilling people or replacing some parts of the jobs or making things more efficient, that has also its unintended consequences on career ladders, because as Sarah talked about, like the career ladders basically like are now split. You almost have like this job that is just mainly for management, and then we look at expertise almost just as a sole ladder itself, which I think it's really interesting, because we don't often look at that from that lens where they are interconnected, but somehow now that both of you are sitting here, it really makes a lot of sense. I want to touch a little bit about Jacob. I think we talk about this. We prepared this as well a little bit on that. But I know that you talk a little bit about this concept of pancaking of the UX field. You have this hypothesis of pancaking of the UX field. Now, I don't claim to fully understand that, but I would love for you to maybe share with the crowd on what is this concept of pancaking of the whole entire UX industry.
Well, it means that user experience is becoming a commodity, and commodity has a bad name, I guess, because people say, oh, if something is commodity, it has no value. That is absolutely not true. It means that it's just something that is normal, the way it's done. It's everywhere. It's not a special thing. It was a special thing in the past. And that's why you had these specialized design or UX departments that was off to the side, not integrated with the business, which I think ultimately is bad and leads to less influence. So much has been talked about, oh, can we get like some chief design officer to be part of the highest level management of the company? Yeah, that might be okay, but the work is actually done, 5 levels below those people. And that's where you need to have UX actually integrated with every single project in every single company, in every single country in the world. And that's that spreading it, hopefully not too thin, hopefully spreading it like more like an American pancake than a French crepe, like in terms of how thick it is, but spreading it out anyway is the point. Another point is that AI does change the way things are done, because it's an upskilling technology. I have this metaphor. AI is a forklift for the mind. It lifts up some of our cognitive burden. And some of the lessons from there's been a lot of research done already actually on AI. And one of the big points is it is narrowing the skill gaps. So it uplifts the less skilled people more. I mean, it helps everybody, but it helps the lower skilled the more. And that means in UX, we can actually also expand our skill base, because AI will help us do things that are adjacent to maybe our core expertise or ability, and allow us to do additional things quite well also. Maybe not as well as the best person in the world, but good enough for a lot of projects. And that leads to what's sometimes called unicorns, or UX people who can do it all. And they're called unicorns because they used to be very rare in the past. But now with AI help, it becomes more common that a single UX person can do a broader range of UX activities and therefore have more influence in this project or that project. You don't have to be part of a big team of hundreds of UX people. You can go and actually help right where you are needed. And so this spreading out. So think of commodity as a good thing. It means we have one. It means that UX is the way things are done. Maybe not in every company right now, but that's what I'm predicting will happen. And that's again with AI, enhancing our abilities. So AI is also a seniority boost. It means that junior staff can now do the work that used to require senior staff. Senior staff can now do the work that used to require like extreme experts. So that is why we can now achieve more in more places, be embedded in more places. And that's why I'm saying we're flattening it out and spreading it out. It goes everywhere. That's also going back to my previous point. I'm not worried about the job situation, because all those new jobs will need to be filled. And that's where people should, but that's what you should think about. You should not think about yourself as being, oh, I need to kind of like build up this enormously big department. You should think about, can I build up my expertise and permeate, the way the world runs? Because that's what we need. We need to make technology suited for humans, and that's a very big job for around the world.
I think Jacob, we should rely on Jacob for his forward thinking and I think rather bullish take on AI, because it is, I think, a more unique point of view. I'm more in the camp of a little bit more apprehensive. And I think that that's okay, because both can live together. I think that AI is going to be incredibly powerful and is going to affect all of us. And it is going to make all of us better. And I do think that it's going to kind of raise the lower bar. To what degree and how it's going to affect, I think, the overall job market, at the end of the day, we really don't know. And I think that that's just where we are. We're so young. And I think the more interesting thing is we have this like young technology that is changing so fast. And then we are also a rather young industry by most other industry standards. And so you have these two really young things, and neither one has grown yet. And I think that that's just helpful context too when we consider all of these different possibilities.
It absolutely is. And I think with AI, I just want to make one more point, which is the AI we have now is the worst AI you will have for the rest of your career. It is improving at a rather rapid pace. I mean, actually, just today I posted on my website, UX Tigers, an example of picture generation, image generation, Midjourney for the last 2 years. 2 years is so little time. If you go and look at that and you see those pictures, 2 years ago they were so primitive. Today they're honestly astoundingly beautiful pictures. 2 years from now, where they're going to be. I mean, the amount of, and I am, as Sarah knows, definitely not a good visual designer whatsoever, but I can go from Midjourney and I can actually make some very, very beautiful pictures now that even 2 years ago, the same tool couldn't do. 2 years from now, maybe I assume it'll be better at not just making it look kind of pretty, but what we want in design is not just be pretty, but also be useful. And that's where it's still somewhat lacking. But those abilities and those tools are empowering all of us. And we have to think about that it's getting better and better at a very, very rapid pace, which is also why I really encourage people. You cannot just talk about it. You have to get personal experience. And by the way, one of the interesting pieces of data from one study was that are people worried or optimistic about AI? And there's a big difference between those two perspectives from people who have actually used it themselves versus people who only read about it. If you only read about it, you will tend to be skeptical. If you try it yourself, you'll be optimistic because you can see that it's useful. You can also see that it's not perfect. That's fine. I mean, we shouldn't say, oh, it's perfect, it can do everything. No, it cannot, but it can do a lot. And that's already now, after only a few years of these useful AI tools. Where will it be in 2 years? Where will it be in 10 years? Most people, if they're completely new, will have 40 years ahead of them in their UX career. And it's going to become really permeating what we all do. And so you got to start now. You can start with smaller projects, as we said, start small, start now, but do start now.
Mm-hmm. And treat it with discernment. You know, this is your intern. You know, everything it puts out, you're going to have to double check, and you're going to be able to form an opinion on. So, you know, I think curation and curiosity are your two tools. And good thing we're all pretty good at that because we chose this field, which I think that those are kind of two inherent qualities that a lot of us have.
Well, thank you so much for that, Sarah and Jacob. It's tons of information, and you know, I think some would argue with that, you know, that we chose this because it's creativity and curiosity. I think some people chose this because it was, I mean, it is a joke that it is easier than coding. That's what a lot of people would say on design Twitter, just to put it out there. But you know, I really appreciate sort of like that thing, that contradiction of thoughts between the two of you. That I think could, as what Sarah said, you know, could coexist together. You know, in that space where, you know, AI is a commodity, but it is also a thing that I think we should be aware of, that, you know, could make us all a little bit better as well. Now, I want to maybe share a little bit of a personal experience today, and then, you know, lead on to my question. There is currently an AI that is so powerful that it simply replaces a lot of core agents. I believe it's all around on Twitter with the VCs. And it's so powerful because it is a singular AI that could almost replace an entire industry, or I would say millions and millions of jobs, like quite literally replace. In that sense, you know, we are also seeing AI with designing UI, where it is churning out UI, where you describe it. It is not as accurate right now. I don't think a lot of designers around me are using it on a day-to-day basis. I might be wrong. But you know, with that said, you know, if comes the day where, you know, obviously AI is advancing so fast, and I think a lot of people might not know this as designers, Because if you're stuck at Figma, you might not know this, but Nvidia's stock just skyrocketed 14% just in one day. Obviously, there's still tons of demand coming in the roof, for semiconductors and obviously with more AI. So we're just only truly at the beginning of things, and this is just going to only get better, right? So fast forward to the situation where, say, AI could really do all this, UI and even UX research and even conduct user research interviews. I mean, would that be a scary future, or would that be a future where, we should all be prepared for? Then in that sense, like, what should we, begin to focus on in that sense?
I'll jump in here. And I think Jakob can definitely speak to the boundaries and rules when using AI to replace user research, which really you can't, but you can certainly make it help you with conducting research. But with this kind of concept around generating interfaces and whatnot, Kate Moran, a colleague of mine, and I were just working on an article about AI generated interfaces. And that's not interfaces designed with AI's help. That's really kind of like live, dynamic interfaces that AI creates based on who you are. So customization, personalization, what you need. And what's really interesting about that is, and I've said this for a long time, you're limiting yourself. If you are a designer, you are limiting yourself by constricting yourself to one medium. So interfaces, for example, when really your skills and the process you use can apply to a lot of different things. And so, yes, there's going to be a shift. I think that it's very likely that we're going to have AI generated interfaces, in the next 3 to 5 years. But someone has to design those. And so your medium may become, defining constraints or parameters that interface has to abide by, but that is still design. It's just a shift of mediums. You're still applying the same, identifying your problem, ideating, and coming up with a lot of different solutions. The game pieces are just different. And so there's going to be a learning curve. We're all on it together. It's not like anyone has a head start. And I think that that's really exciting. And I think it actually appropriately mirrors the trajectory of a lot of designers' careers, which is they start more tangible interfaces, typefaces, colors, and then they end up working towards these more complex system service-oriented problems. And so the beauty of this is that we're all evolving together and we're working towards more complex mediums. But in a lot of ways, I think it may be even more fulfilling.
Yeah, you still have to tell it what you want it to do. And that's the ultimate in design. And I think everything else is just a tool. And I mean, as an analogy, right, when Photoshop came out, it was just like cheating as opposed to like hand drawing everything with a paintbrush and the rulers and a pen and all those type of things. It's just more efficient, and therefore you adapt it, and for you use that. And now AI will draw your entire picture for you. You just have to tell it what you want. Do you want it to say a beaver with a hard hat building a dam, or do you want something else? And you have to make up what it should be. And we definitely have this multi-craft ability now. And this is actually what I wrote about in my article today on UX Tigers, is the multi-craft ability, because a lot of that hands-on craftsmanship that was required in the past to make a movie, cameraman, lighting, sound, all these things, or write a song, you have to write the lyrics, you have to compose the music, you have to sing it. Well, you now have one AI that can make a song. So I actually made the song for this session today with AI. I used 5 different AI tools to kind of compose all the different things. And what took me the most time, is very sad, was to put the subtitles on the video that's on YouTube. Because Adobe Premiere doesn't do good subtitles, which is very bad. It's sort of an elementary accessibility thing to have subtitles on a video. And that was hard. But all the main things were very easy to stitch together from different AI tools. And so that's a little bit, you can combine all these different tools and you can make something interesting. But you have to define the parameters. And with AI, it's really not a specific thing you do anymore. It's more like it's random. It's the done over again every time. For every user who goes and uses an AI tool, an AI-driven user interface, which is what we'll have in the future, their experience will be different. By analogy, this is similar to the way in which responsive web design has made things quite different. And the oldest was like so-called pixel perfect design. Every pixel was defined. Well, now you have like this big screen, you have a small screen, a very tiny screen, you have tall and this tall phones, blah, blah, so many differences. So as a designer, you're not creating the exact number of pixels that the user is seeing, because that's going to be different from different users, but you're designing the rules for which that determine these things are important, they go on top, because that's the basic human factors point. What's on top is more important than one on the bottom. What's below the fold may not be seen. Well, the actual fold is going to be different depending on the circumstances, but the basic point that a lot of users will only see what's visible, they will not see what's invisible because they have to ask for it. Those basic points are always the same, and therefore you have to include them and have made rules for that in the design, even if the exact pixels are created, by this responsiveness. And similar with AI, it's just magnifying this idea of it being created on the fly 1,000 times over, so it becomes more complicated. And that's going to be a big challenge for designers, is to design those rules that will generate the user interface on the fly for the specific user, for their task and for their personality and for their reading level, for example. So we can rewrite the text. So you're not going to write the exact words. You're going to create the rules of what text should be generated at an 8th grade reading level for somebody with low, poor reading skills, at a high school reading level for somebody with a university degree. Always remember, it's like a few levels below their supposed skill, because I don't want to read like it's a PhD thesis if I'm just going to find out, can I book an appointment with my dentist. It's going to be simpler writing, but I can certainly take more difficult text than somebody who is like a high school dropout.
Thank you so much for that, Jacob and Sarah. It almost sounds like that while that there's a possibility that these are going to be generated, like there are a lot of things that just cannot be replaced. I mean, like human intuitions, just like understanding or even generating new ideas. I think as Sarah talked about, that these things that are being generated needs to have a data point that comes from someone, and that someone is all of us here sitting here today. And so I think that's definitely like really positive. I would love to jump to the next question, but I just want to give a shout out to folks who have been sharing on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, because I've been getting a lot of notifications as this goes. There's over 2,000 people right now joining. So thank you all for just like, shouting out live and having even more people join us or learn while they're not here. And I actually ran a pretty interesting poll while, two of you were sharing about your perspective on generated AI. I think, OpenAI actually released their software in Sora, where allow sort of anyone to generate videos. And I just want to get a response on general sentiments. And I think right now we're sort of in a conflict of I'm feeling excited and I'm actually feeling unsure. And my question to pose to, I think, just the crowd, not just Jacob and Sarah, and everyone could just put in the comments is, if you're feeling excited, why? But if you're feeling unsure, the question is also why, right? Why are you feeling unsure? Is it because it is moving too fast? Is it, so I've seen some comments where people are asking each other to join a design union of sort to set AI standards. So it's pretty interesting in the comments, but we'll just jump back into that a little bit later. But Sarah and Jacob, we
really
back
quick,
to the topic of
that should really be a multi-select, right? Because I think again, you can be both. I think you can be really optimistic about what's going to be possible, and you can be really apprehensive about how it's going to affect us and also how society is going to choose to use it, right? And those two things coexist.
That is so true. Now we're seeing those two things, being conflicted, and almost feels like a race right now. But let's see where it ends. And if you have both, just feel free to comment, and would love for everyone to share each other's answers as well. Now, just to make obviously this session a lot more interactive. Now back to the point of AI, I think just a couple of last questions before we go to the audience question. We've seen this title of AI designer as a job title. I think it was mentioned on LinkedIn a couple of times. Perhaps there are already some title regarding AI designer. I have literally no clue what AI designer means because it is so new, it is still getting defined. But I'd love to hear Sarah and Jacob, what are your thoughts on this term AI designer? Where do we start? Where is the starting line for that?
I think that's like having a job title of Photoshop designer or Figma designer or something like that. I mean, AI is a tool. Now, you actually have to have knowledge and skills with AI, or you're going to be such a dinosaur. But for that exact reason, everybody who will have a job anyway will very soon have a lot of AI experience and skills. So I don't think it's something that should be called out specially.
Sounds good. All
I
right.
think it's really indicative of how early and young it is. So, and I get it. I think that people are trying to communicate to their network, this is something that I care about and that I'm curious in. And that seems like an easy way to do it. So I really understand it, but I think we will look back and it will be such a sign of the times.
That's amazing. I think it almost feels like, it's so new that everyone's just trying to figure something out. And I think that's definitely, I would see that as a positive, just because everyone is still interested in sort of like sharing as well. Now, talking about sort of AI, fluency, and now while we're on the topic of AI fluency right now, what type of fluency should I be building right now if I'm a designer, right? What kind of skill sets or what kind of fluency in terms of like, where it can adapt me for the future of where AI is going, because no one actually knows where it's going or is 100% certain, right? Whether would that be AGI or not? So if I'm a designer, what type of fluency should I be building?
I mean, you just have to follow along. But I think I was saying what you should not do. And I don't think you need to worry a lot about the underlying technology. I mean, some people do, some engineers, some data scientists do, but designers and user experience people mainly don't. I mean, it's always good to have a little bit of just general awareness of the technology, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is applying it. What can it be used for? The human interface part. What is due to the users, not just to us, but to the users when AI is more permeating their experiences. Those are the things that we can understand. We can study users. We can use the tools to create designs, get experience with that. But I don't think you need to have a lot of understanding of exactly how, I don't know, let's say large language models are constructed or any of that stuff, because that's going to be changing anyway. And certainly AI in general will be changing a lot as well. But you just have to like keep on it with that curve, because I think if you sort of hold back and say, oh, it's going to be different next year anyway. But if you learn this year's tools now, you'll be in a better position to gradually adopt the further advances that are sure to come.
Yeah, we've been doing research at NNG, watching kind of quote unquote expert users, which are really just people who use these tools a lot, right? And the answer is in exactly that: use them a lot. I really try to use it across different tasks and push the boundaries. It breaks, and it's oftentimes entertaining, so you'll get a good laugh. And it's kind of me developing my own personal best practices and mental model around how I may be able to use it. So I would say just use it a lot. Start with every day and use it across different types of tasks. I just used it for movie recommendations, and it was quite good. I said, I like this movie. I'm looking for something similar. What do you think? So whether it's generative within a tool that you already use, great, test it. Whether it's, using in any kind of like language tool. And then I think image generation is a really fun place right now, mixed with kind of this new audio and motion. So test the boundaries, break it. I think that's a really kind of good goal.
Absolutely. And then double check everything. But reaching back to what we were discussing at the beginning of the session about what can we do as a community, I also think that this is where I would encourage more sharing, even things like just prompt sharing. I see this sometimes, people posting on X, here's like a fancy picture I made, and here's in the alt text the prompt that I used for it. I'd like to see more of that, not just in pretty pictures, but also in more kind of advanced design type of projects and research type of projects. And that for sure, like even just get together a small local group and do like almost like a hackathon, except it's an AI-thon or whatever you want to call it. But you help each other on on what things work and what things don't work, and what is your experience and what has been helpful and what has, of course, not been helpful, because as Sarah said, a lot of times it's terrible, and that's just how it is. I mean, it's in underdevelopment.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah and Jacob. And 100% I agree, like, almost like a build-a-thon, design-a-thon, hackathon would really help everyone learn a lot. I think one thing that I see as a tech founder is also that, everyone wants to jump into regulation without first understanding. And I think that when we start to understand things, we know what to regulate. And I think we also know, where the strengths are, weaknesses are. So thank you for sharing that idea, Jacob. And by the way, Sarah, I actually read a pretty interesting comment, nothing related to AI, maybe related to AI, but someone actually gave you a compliment and said that you sound like Taylor Swift. And so I think that was in there.
It's funny. I don't know if anyone's on TikTok, but the prank going around was an AI generated kind of new leaked song of Taylor Swift's, and it's everyone's responses to it. But it just goes to show you how fast this stuff is moving, because a month ago you wouldn't have been able to do that. So yeah, that's fun. That's very, very funny. I also have seen talk about comments. I've seen a lot of comments around ethics. And I think that anyone commenting or thinking about ethics and regulation, there is so much value there. And I personally am not an expert, but there are people who have been developing this space for a long time. So it's worth just mentioning, like, I know IBM's AI guild has been developing a lot of principles and best practices, and there's kind of a whole realm of thought. So if you're interested, I would go read, because even though it's a new tool, its foundations have been around for a long time. So just worth plugging that, since I saw a lot of comments.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, like regulation and your policies looks like a huge thing. And I think a lot of governments are actually working on it, which is pretty interesting. And I would definitely encourage folks to just jump into these conversations. Super useful. I think we hosted one in Singapore a couple of weeks ago. And that was pretty exciting as well. People just all walks of life, elderlies, mid-career switchers, they just come in and share their opinions. All right. Thank you so much, Jacob and Sarah. We had an amazing session so far. So I want to leave the rest of the time, I need some time to pick maybe like the first two questions, to the top two voted questions, to just put up on stage and have both of you to share your thoughts. All right. So this question is by Benjamin Cantwell. He's a senior designer at HCA Healthcare based in Nashville, Tennessee, United States. So Sarah, how did you foster your own growth and development during your transition into leadership over the years? What are the lessons learned, and what should young leaders do better to be better leaders and managers, and even just getting there?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, Ben, how much time do you have? I feel like this is a pretty big question, and everyone is different. I'm really cautious to not assume everyone is kind of similar to me, and kind of if you're an introvert or extrovert, and if you are prone to want to be in leadership, or maybe just prone to be an expert in your craft, which is just as valid. So I would say, Ben, it's really interesting, because I think, one, in the moment, it never feels like it. And I think that is really important to remember. It never feels like you're taking these big jumps until you reflect and look past, and you're like, wow, that was actually a pretty big moment for me. And then I think the other thing is really understanding what your unique value proposition is, and where you can uniquely contribute to your organization, the people that you work for and the people that you lead, and hone that. If I, looked up at a leader and I was like, oh, I want to be exactly them, then good luck. I'll never be them, right? And I have my own unique traits that I think I've through self-reflection and experimentation figured out and honed in on. So that would be my question for you, is like, what is that? And start to find ways that you can test it, that others can give you feedback on it, and that is visible to your organization or whatever you're working behind, or towards whatever goal. So that would be my advice. Though I will say, that's a very short summary.
Each to their own. Yeah, Sarah, 100%. I think it's very contextual, and what you say just represented that very well as well. I think there's just so much ways that one can do it. But I feel like the perspective you have gave was powerful because it was less of answers, but more of questions to ask yourself and reflect. So I really love that. Thank you so much for that, Sarah. Moving on to the next question by Shannon T. People often talk about the importance of being a T-shaped designer, where you have more expertise in one area. I genuinely enjoy being a generalist, but is there actually value in that? What's the value in being a generalist in such a competitive job market? This is such a good question. So opening up the floor to both of you.
I think there's a lot of value, and one of them, actually two values that are very explicit, which is A, you cut the communication overhead. So if all the information is within one brain, you just know it. Whereas if you have to communicate among multiple people, that takes a lot of time to write up stuff, to read stuff. Things get lost in translation and the transit. So everything in one brain is so superior. And then the second point is credibility. One of the downsides of the UX field, as Sarah mentioned a bit earlier, is it's still a new field in most places. And therefore, we have relatively low credibility, and we also have to fight for, people respecting or recognizing what we do. So like if you do, let's say, a usability study, should we really pay attention to those findings from only 5 users? Is that really significant? No, it's not statistically significant, but it's insight significant. You've got to change your design to work the way your customers work. But if one person does it all, you respect yourself. If you did the study, you believe the results because you did it. So there's a lot of value to doing things yourself. And the second, I guess the third point now, is go back to what I was talking about before with the kind of the pancaking or flattening out of UX being everywhere. This is more easily done if one person can take on multiple tasks, and they're better able to be embedded in more projects, in more parts of the organization. And then the last point I want to make is that AI actually facilitates this, because AI helps you broadening your skill set because it becomes easier. AI provides just-in-time learning, right? It's rather than taking like a full-day course, AI just asking, what should I do right now in this particular situation? It creates a customized answer just for you in your particular right now situation. So learning is so much faster with AI. And then doing it, you can ask it to be your intern and help you with a lot of these things. So it broadens your skill set. It's a seniority boost. And so in that way, AI makes this generalist UX person more successful or more likely to happen, because it's easier to learn all these different things, and you become more skillful in performing because it uplifts. You remember, it uplifts the forklift for the mind, so you get that benefit. So I think it has all of those benefits to being a broader generalist. Now, okay, there's also some downsides, because you can never be as expert as somebody who specializes in just one tiny thing. They will always become more expert at that. And so that means that there will be some design projects where you do need to assemble a team of 20 expert specialists. But I think that's going to be relatively few. I think the vast majority of cases will benefit from people with a broader skill set.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for that, Jacob. Sarah, is there anything to add on? Else we will just mark it as answered.
I think that those are all really good. I think that's all based on what your company may need, and I think what drives you. And then there's a question of what you want to be doing, and where you want to continue to grow, and what you're most excited to pursue. So it's the theme of the day, balancing, right? Balancing these different perspectives and benefits to pursuing different directions.
Thank you for that, Sarah and Jacob. All right, we don't have time for one last question, but there is something pretty interesting, which is, I think this is obviously this is pretty deserving to be shown on stage by Joel Long, a senior product designer at Intuit. It's a pretty interesting question. You mentioned ChatGPT has a terrible design. Can you please explain? I would love to hear your critique. Sarah and Jacob, I'm not sure who said this. I'm pretty sure it's Jacob. I think I heard Jacob say that.
Said it, but I think Sarah could probably speak to the same point, because we've been conducting these usability studies.
We probably have to keep it short if you can, but yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, the basic point is that there's this long scrolling list of stuff, and that is really, things just go past. And then how do you refer to, I want to make this shorter, this longer, change this part? That is very complicated. You've got to write that in prose and descriptions. And there's what I call the articulation barrier in having to explain or provide things in prose, which a lot of people are really bad at. So if you look at actually Midjourney, I did say they had bad design too, but they have an alpha version of a new user interface where they have things like sliders and pull down menus and stuff like that, which are a much easier way of specifying things than having to type them out as prose, compose a sentence, which a lot of people are bad at doing. And then if you work with a lot, which is what people do, it just scrolls off the top of the screen, and it's difficult to refer back. So those are the two biggest complaints. It's like input and output both. Input is difficult because you got to articulate in prose. Dealing with the past output is difficult because it's just one long scrolling page.
Thank you for that, Jacob. Sarah, anything to add from your side?
No, we're just having to adhere to what the technology is versus it adhere to us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I almost thought did thought that Joel was working at OpenAI, which should be pretty cool. I mean, seeing OpenAI designer here to get some good critique sessions.
Maybe they are lurking. Maybe they are lurking, but they don't dare show their face.
Okay, I do hope that Sam Altman is lurking somewhere as well. So let's see. Now, Jacob and Sarah, thank you both so much for the session today. Really, really insightful session. Now, before we wrap up today's session, I'm sure a lot of folks would love to continue follow your thoughts and your work, right? So maybe let's start with Sarah. Where can people follow your thoughts and your work, after this session?
Well, obviously LinkedIn, there's been so many people sharing, but that's definitely kind of where I share my personal voice. And then nnGroup.com, we're doing a lot of studies and my colleagues are brilliant. And we're really trying to approach AI with publishing thought leadership while it's vetted in research that we do. So I'd say those two places. Come along. We're all on this journey together. And thank you all for being here. It's been really great.
All right. So LinkedIn and NN Group for Sarah and Jacob.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly on LinkedIn as well. I would recommend follow me, follow Sarah. That's always good. But I would really recommend for getting my information is actually subscribing to my email newsletter, because it just goes into your inbox. Whereas on LinkedIn, you never really know if you're going to see it or not. And on my website, uxtigers.com, it's like at the bottom of the page, there's a little box and you can type in your email and then you get subscribe to the newsletter. So that would be subscribe to my newsletter and go to uxtigers.com, and at the bottom, the newsletter goes out on Substack, but the subscription is, I think, easier to find unless you guys send out on the chat and the direct link to Substack. It's hard to find there, but on uxtigers.com, it's right there also.
All right, perfect. Yeah, we'll be sending it to the chat so everyone can stay tuned to it. Now, I think, with that said, Jacob and Sarah, I really, really genuinely appreciate you for doing this together. And for everyone who just showed up, some of them might be, middle of the night like myself, or super early in the morning. So thank you all so much. And just one last surprise for everyone. I'm not going to mention names, but Utkarsh has actually pinned something which is pretty exciting. For the next couple of weeks, there we have some really amazing speakers as well. So, registrations are now open, similar sessions, amazing speakers as well, right now pinned in the comments. So all of you can check it out. Now, Sarah and Jacob, thank you so much for being a part of this again. And I hope to host two of you very, very soon with an even bigger crowd. Let's break the record. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Felix.
Yeah, thank you. This was a great session. And I love having this worldwide audience, which is really proof that UX is winning. It's growing. It's becoming ubiquitous, right? So it's so great to see all you people. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. See ya.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.